about the trauma that this pandemic is causing. And I have done a little research through the American Medical Association and have some facts and figures to share with you. And while I know the importance of coaxing content and framing it out so that it can make sense, the irony behind what's happening is that in many cases, the experiences people are reporting does not make sense. Yet there is an underlying message that says, or rather questions, why we think it doesn't make sense. So I know some of you have sent me some private messages, and certainly in our chat, that you wanted to know about the tea I keep talking about. It's the Mulunge Moringa tea. Mulunge Moringa tea. And I actually did get, my wife did get a box. Let's see where we are here. There we go. This is the tea. This is the tea. No, I don't have any royalties. No, I don't have any affiliation. What I do have is a complementary wake-up mechanism. Remember, and some of you do, engage in morning meditation. And I've even expressed to you that meditation can be exercised and engaged anytime during the day, which is what is so powerful about it. I take a midday cat nap, about 25, 30 minutes. And it doesn't matter where I am. I could literally be in getting my hair cut, where my barber still, after about 14, 15 years of going to him, will say, Ronald, how can you sleep when I'm cutting your hair? And you know what I respond? I trust you, Sylvester. I trust you. And I think in some respects, we have to start trusting ourselves. Preparing for the next day is actually a precursor to the meditation, first thing you do when you wake up. And meditation, of course, can be a theological prayer that you engage in. You define it. Because by you defining what is your experience, that's when we build self-efficacy. That's when we build a sense of identity. So my good friends, I say good friends, my good morning substance, this is the product. Mulunge tea, Mulunge Moringa, Moringa tea. It has vitamin C 7 times that of oranges. Now, this is the data, right? I'm giving you, I've told you how it makes me feel. It's a very warm, almost like a harvest gold or a bronze gold color. You steep the tea bag. I always warm up my cups. I have a habit, a fetish of doing that. Then I put my tea bag in. I usually add honey, sometimes ginger, raw sugar, and then I let that steep for a while. And it's just a pleasant experience. And that is really what we're after. A pleasant experience that provides you energy. It's a food, it's a substance that provides nutrients. And these nutrients, as I just started explaining to you, vitamin C, 7 times that of oranges, potassium, 15 times that of bananas. Then there's a amalgamation of calcium, protein, iron, amino acids. Look this stuff up, because as you educate yourself of the foods that you're taking in, and then you start to feel the difference between perhaps your former primary diet, and I say that on purpose because I like my pizza and anchovies on Friday, right? It's not the best of food, but I like it. This is something that I treat myself. Not every Friday, by the way. I've noticed that. I don't need it every Friday. And I don't need a whole pie. Gotta have a pie. Now they're selling you on 2 for 3 and 3 for 2. And oh my goodness, and we wonder why we're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Wally. For those of you who watched that movie, brilliant piece of social expression on the arrogance of humans to defecate on their own planet, move to another, which I think it was a huge spacecraft, and be oblivious to how their behavior impacts on their own system and way of living. And of course, antioxidants, that's been around for about 30 years, helps to build and protect our cellular structure. This is really important stuff because when I start talking about food, which I will, I've actually been preparing foods for the last 6, 7 months, and I just put them on the side. I'm not ready to present that content. What I have learned through biology, botany, and zoology, how animals feed and what they feed on and how they are sustainable, is that the food is decomposed, using a project management term, right? It's broken down by our body's physical and chemical process, and then the nutrients are taken into the body, specifically the spine, which ends up in the brain, which when you wake up in the morning and you're ready to rock, you can, as opposed to, oh my God, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm dying for Friday. It's all about communication, folks. And it's not just the technicals and fundamentals. When you're in a public environment, when you're presenting for a job, when you're trying to build rapport with that to be, hopefully, wannabe, vardade significant other, it's about being sensitive to what makes up a pleasurable experience while boosting our immune system. No, I'm not going to extrapolate into it helps you against every disease on the planet. What it does, and we've found people who are physical, right? They move their bodies, they stretch, they exercise in the morning. You're communicating to your body, you're preparing for the day, you're allowing the introduction of that day to be on purpose. Just as we do for projects, just as we do for business, just as we do for preparing for a trip or a holiday. All of those are messages to ourselves, and it's what we do prior that is important. I now actually realize the importance of the name of my college, Prior Park College. Prior to entering the world, prior to engaging with people, preparing your mind, that's what education should be about. Preparing the mind, not fixing it in a silo or a tunnel vision of the world, because that's where we have the disconnect. So the famous Malunge tea finally has come out of hiding. Yes, this stuff is totally awesome. Malunge moringa tea, it's probably been around for millions of years, but until they package it and market it and prepare it for us, we just don't know about it. Vitamin C, potassium, calcium, antioxidants, that helps to build our cellular structure of our bodies. And some people are in tune to that. You can still be abstract. You can still be part of that material world. The difference is you understand the broader scope of things while building our immune system. And I do believe that. I believe it because I feel it. I feel it because when I take in other foods and I feel sluggish and I don't feel as energized, I call it living food, just as I call what many people refer to as animals, I refer to them as nature's best. These are defining the meanings in our own lives. And can you do that? Are you willing to do that? Are you strong enough? Are you courageous enough? Are you intelligent enough? or do you go down the path of group think? So today's discussion is all about communicating with temperance. And I believe I started off in that correct manner. Meditation. What is meditation to you? How do you exhibit meditation? It is nothing is good nor as bad as first reported, right? So the American Medical Association expectations of self have spoken about this in their April the 6th issue, and this was on the internet. You can see this on the internet. And there are 4 areas that they find this pandemic is impacting us in ways that most people have not either experienced nor considered. And that is why when I talk about there is no such thing as a generation gap, it's an interest gap. This obviously impacts and therefore is interesting to pretty much all of us. And yet there are grades of emotional engagement that some have designed or desired to express. So, number one, pandemic fatigue. When you're doing something new that you're not accustomed to, you have an endurance range. Anything, go cut some wood, go run a mile, then go run 5 miles, then go run 20 miles, then go run 50 miles. At some point, your body, your mind is going to say, whoa, this is too much for me. The noise in the morning, the anticipation of an event, that can also be a level of endurance. We can get to the event, we can prepare for the event, we can apply for the event, we can register. When we're in the throes of that experience, our bodies and our minds will push back. There is seemingly a strata, if you will, below which we feel we need to do more. We want to be engaged. Above which we feel stressed out. There is a sweet spot. We can counter some of that behavior, that experience, by how we communicate with ourselves. So I've told you, and I will continue to say so, because I'm in an environment where we have animals, and those animals will express themselves. So when you know that and you come to the venue with that understanding, it changes the parameters of tolerance. It changes what you're willing and anticipating, blah, 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 anticipating what your experience will be. But many of us, again, we just helter-skelter. This is the way it should be, even though your prior experience was no better in retrospect, in hindsight, than what you just experienced. I'll bet the pandemic. I want to go back to normal. Really? Let's play the tape. Rewind and play the tape. Rewind and play that tape. You complained as much in the past as you are now because you're not taking proactive thinking, behavior, preparation to address life itself. Even when life is sweet, especially when life is sweet, because we know all manner of things come out of the woodwork. So pandemic fatigue is the length of time you are impacted by an event or series of stimuli, right? Take a machine, pistons. The human cannot do what a machine does because after a while, our structure wears down, our muscular, the repetitive nature of something, right? When you're in a conference, especially when you're in a conference, and that is not engaging, people shut down, tune out, turn off, right? So that's pandemic fatigue. And that is a big deal, right? That is a really big deal because even driving, they say 2.5 hours and pull over. Not because you're incapable, not because you're not some less than you know, person that should be going further, driving more, driving further. Some people, younger people, I think it was from New Jersey to uh, Tallahassee, I believe it was. And then I went down into Island Marauder, which is the second key in Florida Keys, the second island, they call them the Keys. And I did that, I think, in like 9 or 10 hours, something to that effect. I just drove. I just wanted to get down there. And then I realized on the way back, I said, wow, look what I missed. The highway, and then I took some county roads, and they were absolutely gorgeous. I didn't have GPS at the time. That's how long ago it was. It was as pleasurable as it would be today. Pandemic anger. This one, as it alludes to by its title, is your energy and your angst to the event, to the actual issue at hand. And psychology tells us that, yeah, we are going to identify that source of pain, that source of trauma, and we communicate that accordingly. What we then need to do is balance, temperance, right? By the way, when we talk about temperance, let's get that definition here, is moderation and voluntary self-restraint. Moderation, and here's the key, voluntary self-restraint, right? What we refrain from doing, not what we do, what we refrain from doing. And we can add another component to that, and that is when you find when you find yourself in a challenge, when you find yourself in a situation that is undesirable, pause, take a moment. Then begin to say to yourself and speak to yourself, what is my desired outcome? And if I can't recognize it and achieve it right here, right now, how do I work towards that? What resources, what capabilities, what skills do I have to work towards that? And am I in that moment of learning? Learning being unknown, a place of unknowing, unfamiliar. You might have known certain aspects, certain degrees, a certain amount of intensity. The experience you're currently in takes you to that next level. The expression, are you ready for this? The expression, take it to the next limit, right? Take it to the next level. So again, when we think of learning, when we think of communications, when we think of evolving and developing and engaging and performance, there's always another level because it's infinite. Learning is infinite. Experience is infinite. Possibilities are infinite. It's only when we put that proverbial eggshell, that acorn around our sensibilities, our structure, our capability, our learning, that's where the problems are created. So we've got pandemic fatigue. I've been in this for 6 months, 1 year, now going on a second year. I don't see any relief. I don't see any resolve. I've tried this approach. I've tried that approach. I'm doing that already. And we quickly actually start eating at ourselves because we don't see resolve and we haven't been taught to have resilience, to have stick-to-itiveness. Interesting stuff, huh? Pandemic anger, emotional outlet. Right? I think it was Eddie Murphy in Vampire in Harlem, Vampire in Brooklyn, and he says, you need an outlet. All of us need an outlet. That's a discussion in and of itself, by the way, because consider this. We used to traditionally come Monday through Friday, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we get away from work. Not everybody. At the same time, that was the mantra. Now we have to pick the times we can get out of that rut, of that dredging sequence of work. And that's why the irony is, with all the social media, with all the abilities to engage a high level of living, many of us are still digging a ditch, going down, as opposed to lifting ourselves up. Here's a new one, which the physicians and psychiatrists are coining. Let's see if I can get this one right. Corona somnia. Corona somnia. This relates to the interruption in our circadian rhythm and sleep specifically. Our circadian rhythm and sleep specifically. We got a message here. Let me see if I can grab this one. Want to become famous by followers and views on. That's what I love about social media. People will try to piggyback and sell you stuff. Thank you. Appreciate it. But I don't want to buy anybody. This is not a slave ship. Especially the Europeans know very well how they have been bred out of themselves. And now, well, they're just part of the system. Corona somnia. There you go. What you send out can come back. Corona somnia. When we are interrupted, our sleep, our ability to rest, our sense of safety, these are all part of communication. These are all part of our ability to see and sense safety. Physicians are saying that we need to understand that we can re-engage ourselves. I said to you earlier that I do little cat naps, right? So after this session, I do a quick 20 minutes. I go outside, take a break. I come back, get back on the clock. And I find that if I'm paying attention to my physical self, to my being, then I will address and respond accordingly instead of reacting. You have to be willing, perhaps, to step to the side a moment and listen to what your body is saying, listen to what your mind is saying. Go and find the resources that can support that, can enable a fresh perspective. You can't come to the dinner table dressed the same way and expect people to admire your fashion, your sense of fashion. And of course, our old favorite, anxiety, right? You're going to have trauma, you're going to have anxiety, you're going to have angst, right? You're going to have bollocks. Anxiety, yes, absolutely. It is real. Depression is real because it's a disconnect of what we think our reality should be and what we're now experiencing. And in many cases, through understanding situations like this, communicating with temperance, and then moving through a series of mental and physical exercises that decompresses, de-escalates, and allows you to at least have a sense that from this moment to that moment, I can make sense of my experience. I can address that noise in my head, that external stimulus that is interrupting my own communications. Because really, that's what it's all about. When someone wakes you up from a dead sleep, that's what it's really all about. When you get bad news, an experience, a bad experience, that's what's happening. So trauma comes in many forms, and this pandemic is one more challenge. Our sense of social order is being interrupted, right? Trauma comes in many forms, and this is just my take on this. Trauma, disruption, uncertainty, suffering, pain comes in many forms. This pandemic is one more challenge. Our sense of social order is being challenged, is being interrupted. So what are we doing? Are we simply going to mentally fold and say, well, there's nothing I can do? Or are we going to, as the expression is, rise to the occasion, dig a little deeper within ourselves, uncover, unveil another aspect of our capabilities? Just as when we say, oh, we didn't think that person would behave in such a way, oh, that's out of character, then I think we can reverse that conversation and say, let me identify an ability that I have, a skill that I have that has been laying dormant. You have to be willing to seek it out. You have to be willing to engage it. You have to be willing to go after it, because the pain and frustration of your current situation is not going to change until you do. And in many cases, it's taken you months, if not years, to subscribe to the pain and suffering that you're going through. And the reality is, yes, it is our own decision. We can, in most cases, change the beat. How do we do that? How do we do that? Well, one way that I have learned, and I didn't realize again until I got into coaching, into mentoring with people, and instead of trying to get them to think a process, a way, a methodology on a track that I've learned, what I've found out is ask them to think globally. What do I mean by that? There are whole nations, people that have been going through wicked change, catastrophic change, day in and day out, and they have learned resilience. Not the resilience that you find on LinkedIn, the academic descriptions of this is resilience. I'm talking hardcore, no water, having to walk 5, 10, 15 miles, no education, having to scrap to learn how to read, no transportation, using a bicycle to get the water, using a bicycle to go into town to bring groceries, produce back. You see, when you take what many of us have as a given, rip that out, and then find yourself having to create opportunity, create basic opportunity, your mind goes into a different mode. It can shut down and break, or it can become creative. There's a great movie called The Boy That Harnessed the Wind. And if you're aware of how systems are built, how cities are served, how systems support our standard of living, you might immediately come to a realization that this is an individual that used wind to direct water that would feed the land, that would allow fruits, vegetables, and crops to grow. Now, some people might say, well, wow, where did that come from? Because as a kid, my parents introduced me to horticulture. They introduced me to farming. When I went to the school, they continued that instruction in how our food gets on the table. You see, when you break the basic understanding of your existence, you not only break the mechanical industrial complexes which are well in place right now, which are causing much of our disruption, much of our mental angst, you also disrupt your sense of life. That communication is, well, I go to the grocery store and I pick up the food. How come there's no toilet paper? Right? How come there's no toilet paper? Well, I filled out my application and nothing happened. I got my DBE, MBE, SBE, VA, minority female profile established, and I haven't got a contract. You are missing pieces, fundamental pieces. Well, I've got the degrees and I've got the PhD. I had a young lady We were at the farmers market, and this is a county fair. We have the farmers market, which is Columbus, right here on 206 in, I believe it's Columbus, New Jersey, in Burlington County. And it's a huge farmers market. Well, down the road, about 4 or 5 years ago, they decided to build a county fairgrounds. And the farmers, produce, and various vendors come and entertain citizens of our county. My wife and I, we go there because you see some incredible animals. Some animals I've forgotten about. They're not only domestic, they're farm animals, and some are wild animals. Hybrid fox, for example, hawks, right? These are nature's best. And we were talking to this young lady. She was behind a wrought iron steel gate, not just a fence, a gate, sitting next to this huge yak. The yak is a big animal, it's a bovine. And we got into a conversation. Where are you from? What's going on? Where did you bring your bud? And she's expressed frustration in the field that she had chosen. She said, well, I want to go back to school because I've got a master's and I'm not able to get a job. And my response was, well, what are you doing with the knowledge that you have? Well, I have the degree, I have the master's, I have the information, I have the paper, but there are no jobs. I said, well, why don't you think of teaching instead of just working out a job? Oh, I never thought of that. I said, what about research in the field? Obviously, this huge yak might be able to teach you something. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. I'm living with my parents. Whoa, well, that set the whole conversation in a different direction. When we communicate, we're coming from our own perspective of life. And if it doesn't jive based on experience, based on, and if we have desired outcomes, see, that's possibly another component to a failure of communication. We actually don't have an intent, we don't have a desired outcome. We are just there and we're told, get this and you'll have that. There's a whole chunk missing right in there. There's a whole chunk of work, of relationships, of understanding of how things work, how things change, how things are disrupted, how economics works to draw in and or rebuff or expel resources. Well, the conversation obviously wasn't going to go anywhere and we kind of left it at that. And I shook my head to my wife at the time and said, well, there's the youth of the future. There's the youth of the future. Not very cool, right? That's what's happening, especially now with this pandemic, where there are fractures in our system, in our society. One extreme, I want freedom to come and go and associate as I wish, and the other one to be cautious, take the science. What about if we looked at, again, coming back to that global perspective of how other people over time have addressed these challenges? Can that give some modulation in our behavior? Can that temper the angst? Another question comes up: what upsets you and why? A lot of times we react to situations. What if we took some time in meditation, in prayer for that matter, in our day, and just looked back and reflected and said, well, what made me feel threatened, angry, upset about an experience, about a conversation I had with somebody? Is it that my expectations, my desired outcomes were not met? Was it that I didn't get the experience, the feel of that encounter? When you go to a conference, for example, especially with the virtual, a lot of people have checked out of their work and their society. They just come to the meeting, put the blank, turn off the camera, and they just listen. Or they're probably playing with something or working on a remote laptop or a tablet with something totally removed from what they are supposed to be paying attention to. What upsets you and why? Understand yourself, communicate that to yourself. Have that as an anchor, if you will. Being flexible, yet having that anchor. How about a reverse conversation? Why is this happening to me? Why not? What have you done? What have you not done that has set you up to have this experience? A reality check. A lot of us don't want to do that. A lot of us feel intimidated by that. So a lot of us have not been instructed how to use so-called risk and negative aversion to our advantage. That's really the deal there. Psychology of winning in life. Now, some of these this is interesting because some of these are actual videos I did. This one specifically, Psychology of Winning in Life, was I recorded this back in April of 2018. So there was probably some issue, and I don't always take the hot topic of the day, the week, or the month, and then do a story on it. But rather, I'm using and sharing with you different perspectives that, when needed, you can draw on. Okay, an arsenal of resources. The kid in you, the kid in me. This was April of 2018. We had a major storm. So when people today say, well, we've never had this kind of weather at this time of the day of the year. No, we have. Yeah, we have. Because actually, in reality, and in terms of the pandemic type interruptions in our life, tsunami type, change type, the weather patterns, which I grew up with, 4 seasons, haven't been around for about 25, 30 years. The sequence, right? Spring, summer, fall, winter, have not been consistently experienced for literally the last 20, 25 years. And the meteorologists about 30 years ago said, our weather system, our patterns will change. They have started to change, just as we've now understood through scientists, that our North and South Pole is being interrupted. So there's a pull and push, which makes absolute sense. Consider the impact of the sun, the uh, the impact of our moon on our oceans, and when you start to understand that, you realize that things do change and will change. So when you are interrupted, you're not always on axe, you're not always on tenterhooks, you're not always on tippy toes. Stay in the Zone was a recording program I did back in September 2019. Stay in the Zone. You recall that people who are performing at their peak, when they experience that nirvana, they've just done a concert, they've just fixed a piece of equipment, they've got a piece of engineering to run smoothly, they've got code. They say code is poetry when done correctly, right? Code being how we program computers. They stay in the zone. They don't go and have a beer or a pizza. They stay in the zone. Are you doing that? Or are you saying, oh man, it's too much, and I've got whatever I'm working on, fatigue. I need to take a break. You stay in the zone. Doesn't mean you have to physically work on it. You marinate. You marinate what you did. You marinate the experience. You marinate the sequence. You marinate the thought process. You marinate the feeling of getting it right. Muscle memory. You see, you can take all these seemingly abstract relationships and you find that, quite frankly, they're one of the same. They're used in different professions, industries, fields at different times. Yet, the underlying message is, in order to be at your peak performance, in order to improve how long you can sustain that performance, you have to stay in the zone. What are you grateful for? May 2020. What are you grateful for? We're supposed to do that, and There's a ritual at Christmas and at different times of different theologies and cultures that we express what are we grateful for. How about we do it every single day? How about we do it when we get through certain gates during the day? You wake up. Thank you for life. Thank you for the ability to think and breathe while I'm asleep. Thank you for our mind's ability to rest. We talk about corona somnia. It's not just not resting, it's our minds working, which it does. Our mind actually starts to repair itself when we are in sleep. It can't do that if the experience of the day, previous day, and the anticipated experience of the next day is hell, is I don't know what to do. We have to begin to arrest those emotions. And we use these processes, we use these thinking exercises to do that. More importantly, it's not just a one off, it's a multiple times. Because isn't that what a high performance athlete does? Isn't that what a high performance piece of engineering does? We keep tweaking it, we diagnose it, we analyze it, and then we apply what we've learned. Can we not do that to our own incredibly powerful brain? Can we not arrest the sense of inability to do that? What are you grateful for? That is got to be right up there. So we talked about temperance, moderation. Temperance is moderation, not far left, not far right, not too far up, not too far down. It's voluntary self-restraint. That's the real difference between humans and nature's best. Voluntary self-restraint. We can, if we wish to. We refrain from doing negative things that impact others and take us down the wrong path. Nationalities around the world. Right now, in the Amazon, yet again, corporate interests are dominating people who have their whole culture steeped in that region. And they are being annihilated, they are being cleansed, they are being killed. So when we think of the tsunami that we're going through in terms of this pandemic, what if it was just another level higher? And that is, it's just a matter of time before you get wiped out. How would you now respond? Global diseases over time and over the ages, over time and over the ages. The reason why I separate those two is over time, in terms of how long did it impact that nationality, that culture, that country, that time. Excuse me, that time. Whereas over the ages, they come and they go. They come and they go. And we go right back to living food. How can you sustain your body's overall health? And it's not by eating processed food. It's not by eating fast food. It's not by eating packaged goods. And you can say what you care about, oh, it takes longer, it's more expensive. That's specious. That is specious. It's more expensive to keep someone in one of those medical facilities, just as it is incarceration, our system, our social system of incarceration, than to create an alternative process and system that arrests the behavior. That's the message. We have to work out the details, absolutely, the interest and intent and the benefit to a minority as opposed to the majority of our communities. Social responsibility, civics. Hello. We've forgotten that over the number of years. Civics, what is that? Who cares? All for me, and I'll set you free. Right? Age groups. If you're from different age groups, are we sending back? Are we having conversations? Are we sharing stories of resilience? And are those conversations open to everybody or focused on one group? You know, it's amazing when you go to a conference. And yes, of course, you're going to see people who are of interest or have been mandated job requirements to go to a conference. Yet it's the interest that will bring diverse groups and opinions and perspectives that will forge new meaning, new understanding, fresh perspectives. Some of you may have seen the video that I did some years ago at a GameStop. And was it GameStop? No, Games Workshop. Games Workshop. I got the ticket still up on my pin board up here. Games Workshop. And a young girl, granted she was with her father. At the same time, she engaged openly, and the father was welcoming the engagement of people in the store with her. And that brought me to the understanding that there is no such thing as a generation gap. It's an interest gap. What if we could, without having to have wicked change, disruption, war, what if we could begin to share that conversation across age groups? Dismantle the term age groups and talk about interest. Talk about how a story, a good story, can evoke a sense of well-being, can evoke new ideas, new ways of thinking that allow us to address life's challenges. Past experience, absolutely. Do we now? Here's a question which I had with my parents for many years. Is our past is their past our future? Is their past our future? Now, for those of you who have great great grandparents still alive, you may have had this conversation. I can recall only one time having it with my great grandfather on my mother's side, my grandfather on my mother's side. And I remember we were in London, we were on the second floor of row housing, which we had our own bedrooms, which was nice. And mum and dad had their master bedroom, which they call it that now. They probably called it that then as well. And I remember my grandfather coming in and saying, "You kids are wild." And I asked him, I said, "Why do you say that?" I said, "Well, why do you say that?" Now, again, many people, their relationship with their elders was strained. They had to watch what they said. My parents were pretty open. And even though my grandfather was upset, he did answer and he said, "You don't have discipline. You don't have discipline." And I wondered, what does that mean? He didn't explain it to me. He didn't give me a dictionary definition. Go to the Webster, the thesaurus, look up the word. No, he didn't do that. He just said, "You don't have discipline." And what I've learned over the few years, even after that, was that he came up under an environment that mandated he behave in a certain way. There was no questioning, there was no answering back. And I didn't have a problem with that because I felt I was learning something. Many years later, still, I found out that it was beneficial because people did not arrest their behavior, they did not arrest their conversation, and they got into trouble, serious trouble. As of today, we have the same scenarios being played out. So our discussion is all about communicate with temperance, because that temperance is not sitting on the conversation we're having. It's drawn from our past. It's drawn from our expectations of what we want. And it's not crafted in a way that says to the people that we're with, the one person that we're engaging, what is our intent? What is our mutual objectives? What are our opposing points of views that we need to address? You've heard about the passive aggressive. You've heard about the one element in a discussion, in a negotiation, that totally destroys all communications, all relationships. Look at what happened with our past president. Family members were destroyed. And if we don't recall that past experience, it wasn't an age difference, it was an interest difference. Yet we were not willing to come to the table and say, well, why do we feel this way? And even with that feeling, that expression, can we validate it? Is it true? Is it true? You know, I saw a poster the other day. It said 0.00 I think 0.02% of all gun violence is committed by people who are legitimately allowed to have a gun. There you go. So then it's not necessarily that we have to limit guns. It's we have to create systems and mechanisms and processes that limit how people get those guns. Yet there'll always be a gray market, always, with everything. Cars, guns, food, all resources. That's basic survival. That's why we need to that's why we need to have those conversations. Because we can't always think, and we shouldn't always think, because of evidence or because of how we behave, that we're all on the same page, that we all will go that distance to get what we want, that we are all of the same elk, we're all the same mind. Communicate with Temperance. The association, the American Medical Association, has shared with us that at times like this, we need to broaden our understanding and broaden our conversation with others who have gone through similar, if not more traumatic, and begin to temper our emotions, right? In behavioral and developmental circles, we call that de-escalation, right? In the military, we refer to that as ratcheting it down, right? In the corporate world, conformity. I'm not sure about that one. Conformity. I'm not sure about that one. So here we are. We're coming up to the end of our program. Wow, this 1 hour seems to fly by. And it's really cool. I'll tell you, I'll share with you over the last week. Now we're into our second week. It's Tuesday. And my dogs will be barking. The birds will be chirping. The sun, the light will come out first. I'll have my Malunga moringa tea, and I prepare for the day. I do this at 6 o'clock because that's when we're most open to receptive information. You're coming out of that alpha state of sleep. And even though with the return to work, the noise in the neighborhood has totally changed. The amount of noise, cars going by. It's so early in the morning. I'm talking 5:30, 6 o'clock. And even my incessant dog barking outside. That is the new reality, which has been around all the time. People have had to deal with life and circumstances. Now we must arrest our emotional state. It's not that these distractions are going to go away or that we can always control them, as we saw with that most infamous videotaping where a financial reporter was sharing their findings and their children burst into the room, even with the babysitter. The children were strategic in getting away. Maybe they did a cool rugby move and got away from the babysitter. That was effective communications at its height. In all seriousness, with what is going on now, overlaid with multiple distractions, I'm going to leave it at that. If we believe we are an intelligent species and are capable of managing ourselves, and perhaps that assumption is totally incorrect, and in some cases our behavior shows that that is not correct, then we will begin to reach out for resources. We will begin to create dialogues with one another. We will look for people of totally different and opposing points of views so that we can broaden our understanding of what possibilities are. Where does the thinking and these ideas come from? That's really the most important aspect. Where do they come from? And are they legitimate? Are they still meaningful? Do they still provide? Are they still necessary? Are these perspectives still necessary? Trauma comes in many forms. This pandemic is one more challenge, one more that challenges our sense of social order. That's really the deal, right? Our sense of social order. And if we can address that in a meaningful way, in a way that's mutually beneficial, a lot of people push back just with that idea being presented. Well, it can't be mutually beneficial because I want what I want. Okay. And why is that? Why do you feel that we can't all come together? And that's where our questions, with solution focused brief questions, those 101 questions that I shared with you, that the gentleman that I'm studying with, Elliot Connie, it has really given me a fresh perspective. It's allowed me to go a little deeper into questioning how to engage with people. It questions my ability. It questions my ability how to engage with people, right? It's one thing to order something. I want fish sticks. I want a Dell computer. I want to understand the process in which to apply for a certain certification or educational standard. It's quite another to have a discussion and identify that the path to achieving it is very different from one person to another. The path is very different. Do I go to school? Do I go to the military and get them to fund it? Do I try for grants? Do I ask my relatives, friends, and families to fund it? Do I apply for loans? There are all ways of getting education. There are all ways of securing higher education, getting that certificate. What's right for you? It's not. It's not about what's right for you is wrong for someone else, or is not as good. It's what's the optimum way, and they're all possible. They're all equally possible for different people. Can we think in that fashion, or are we still parochial and linear in our thinking? That's really the deal. Well, Tuesday is kicking off. I've got a long day today. I actually have about four client engagements. And then, as usual, we have to um, get busy with ourselves, making sure that we are on point. So, communicate with temperance, ratchet it down. We don't always have to exert ourselves. And I love to look at the larger nature's best as they choose and are on purpose with how they engage with their environments. They do not expel unnecessary energy. They consider what is important, and their timing is crucial because it's about survival, and it is about survival. Make no mistake about it. There are hundreds and thousands of people, probably millions, who on a daily basis cringe at what the day will bring. Communicate with tolerance, communicate with temperance, and see how you can help someone else. This is Ronald Allen, managing life's changes. I wish you a pleasant day.